Good afternoon. I'm Robin Reed, National Foundation for Women Legislators, CEO and President. And I have to tell you that I'm eternally grateful for what hyperbaric has done for me. It was just after the 4th of July 2 years ago that I had spent the morning with disabled American veterans. I was so passionate about what they were doing. Is this picking up well? Yes. I was so passionate about what they were doing that I'd gotten very, very intense because they'd helped my father, who was a World War II veteran. So I was very, very involved in that particular morning, very intense. I had lunch with my husband and went back from lunch to the office, was talking to my mother's caregiver, and I realized that my voice was changing, and I started to drool, and my whole left side went stiff. And my assistant said, Sam, something's wrong. Of course, they called 911 immediately. I went to this very excellent hospital where Ronald Reagan had been treated. I had wonderful emergency room care. It couldn't have been any better. But when we finished with emergency room care, Sam said to the head neurologist, who at the time was snapping her gum and being very flippant, I actually called her a twit, who had just adopted a little baby, a young thing. And she was snapping her gum, and had I been able to speak, I would have patted her on the hand and said, my dear, my mother would think you'd be more credible if you'd stop popping your gum. But of course I couldn't speak or walk at the time. And so Sam had just asked her what's next, and she said, oh well, we'll send her over to gerontology. You know, they can't walk or talk over there either. She won't mind. And he said something that we have to believe. He said, bullshit. And actually, because he'd been an NFL football player, Denver Bronco, he knew about hyperbaric chambers because so many of the NFL players have them. But finding one was a real problem. He asked her, what about a hyperbaric chamber? She said, absolutely not. Of course, they have many of them at George Washington University Hospital, but they wouldn't let me use one. She said there's no evidence that shows that they can be helpful at all for brain injury. The doctors there had said I had the most massive stroke they'd ever seen at George Washington Hospital, right in the middle of the brain. They had administered TPA immediately in the emergency room, but the care after the emergency room was the real problem. So we did something sort of unconventional. Sam remembered somebody named Bill Duncan, and we found Steve Reimer. He didn't have anything set up for us at the time. He and Dr. Mosiani worked together. I actually went to his warehouse. We shouldn't tell that, should we? And it was July, and there was no air conditioning. But through the glass in this wonderful hyperbaric chamber, I read my spiritual things. And it was amazing. I did notice a difference. I would sort of limp in and come out. I had 40 treatments, then we did the pause. And then Steve Reimer and Dr. Mosiani were able to do something a little unconventional for me so that I could continue the treatments. Because 6 weeks after my massive stroke, I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico and ran a conference of about 500 elected women. And I spoke at every single plenary session. My women were so shocked that this massive thing had happened to me. And so, but the interesting thing is that they did take 2 hyperbaric chambers down in the semi to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we were on a Native American Indian reservation at the time, a pueblo, lovely resort area. And they were so impressed with me because they'd known me for years and years and years that they actually bought the hyperbaric chambers and are now using them on the Indian reservation. I did have a little interruption and have had just a slight regression since I did the 40 treatments and the interruption and 40 more. But I'm back in the hyperbaric chamber and improving daily. I cannot tell you how important it is, not just for our wounded veterans, but those that are trying to help them and that are passionate about it and trying to continue with our lives. I'm still an active president and CEO of the National Foundation for Women Legislators. And I'm very, very grateful for the hyperbaric chamber treatments that I received. Thank you all so much.